Hi, this episode of Top M&A Entrepreneurs is brought to you by the Magnolia Firm. I wanted to show you a new listing they got. Profitable literature review site with reoccurring revenue. It's asking $935K, revenue's $300K, and the net $214. Very, very profitable. It's 100% remote. Also, built-in eyeballs, 100K Facebook following, 80K email list. Get all the information, read it, study, make a fully formed offer. Just be mindful you will have competition. Now let's get on with the show.
Up M&A Entrepreneurs. Today my guest is Mike Finger. Mike has been involved in 4 exits, and now he runs a business called Exit Oasis. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, John. Thanks for the invitation.
Let's go back and to your ordinary world before you got into exits and acquisitions. But tell me about this first exit that you did. Where was that, a startup, or is it a company you bought? What was that?
No, it was a startup. My wife and I started a business in the mid-'90s, cut our dining room table in half to make 2 desks, and started serving clients out of our living room. I was a bit of a growth junkie, right? I don't know if they can see me tapping my vein here, but it was always the next client and the next employee and the next and the next, and grew that business to 50 full-time employees over the course of a decade. Looked in the mirror, saw a burnt out piece of toast, and thought it's time to do something else. And that's when I had my first moment of, what do you mean I can't sell my business?
Yeah.
That journey to that point was, I mean, all the cliches, right? 18-hour days, but got to a place where when I reached out to the brokers, they told me 2 owner dependent, not enough cash flow, all of these traditional reasons why you can't sell a business.
Which is that they're saying, hey, I can't sell this fast, and I'm not going to make a lot of money on it. So, yeah. That's
right. Fix this, and then give me a call in 3 years, buddy. Right. I mean, it was a 2x.
What was it selling? What were you
the kind of business? We provided back office and support services to schools, nonprofits, and associations. So everything, I think at the end, I employed 25 or 30 accountants. We did financial management, compliance, executive director kind of work. So it was professional services in support of those kinds of organizations.
Yeah, that sounds very valuable. People need that.
The need was there. The knowledge on my part of what it meant to create a business you could sell was not at the time. 5 years later, the business was identically sized, and we successfully sold the business. So it was that journey, that professional pivot, that kind of educated the rest of what I have ever done professionally.
So did you educate yourself on what was a good business to sell, and then implement those tactics or strategies in place? Like, hey, 2 owner dependent, or cash flow not good.
Yeah, exactly. It was, and it again, it sounds so freaking simple when you're sitting on the other side of the table, or if you're a buyer looking at a business, which I've been a couple times myself. You look and say, well, how can the seller not see this? How can they not understand that I need X, Y, and Z? But as the owner at the time, I didn't look at that stuff, and that's pretty common for owners. And so for me, it was about changing my perspective, putting on those buyer glasses and saying, what does this business need to look like to be attractive to a potential buyer?
Yeah. And 5 years later, when you did sell it, how did you go through that? Did you go through a broker? Did you get the multiple you were looking for? How'd the negotiation, that story around that go?
Yeah, went through a broker. If I recall, thinking back, from signing the listing agreement to sale, I think it was about a year. I was done with the business. I mean, mentally, I had checked out sometime earlier. probably 5 years earlier, in fact, when you consider that I got to that place of I got to get out of here. But
Yeah, how did you find gas in the tank for another 5 years?
well, I mean, what choice do you have, right? I mean, that's the
right?
Right. That's the hard part for so many small business owners. They think I'm going to get to that place of I want to sell, and I'll just flip the switch and it'll sell. And they learn that's not the case. And as you pointed out, you realize my tank is empty, and I've got three to 5 years of work to do here. Not just work to do. It's not just maintaining, right? You got to change the business. And that is hard stuff to do. And if your tank is empty, it's difficult. It was hard, John. It's one of the biggest challenges professionally I've ever had.
Yeah. Let me dive into that, because this is a lot about mindset. I don't, what everybody else says, the tactics, the strategy, but this is mindset right here. What did you and your wife sit down and realize and then put into place and believe and faith and everything to go, okay, we got to be able to fix this to be able to sell it, to get out of it? What was that? I mean,
it was a mix of desperation, right? Again, the what choice do I have? Fear, right? Am I really going to have done this 10 years of work for nothing? And then the hope, right? I mean, I still had that entrepreneurial hope that, I can do this, I can fix it. But it was that change of perspective about what the process of making transitioning a business really is. And it's about the relationship between buyers' needs, sellers' needs and wants, and how those can and should align. But again, so much of what we did up to that point was driven by an assumption. I thought it was informed assumption, but as I painfully found out, that wasn't the case. Just having 50 employees doesn't give your business value. Just surviving a decade doesn't give your business value. Certainly not transferable value.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the author Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces, where he talks about everybody goes through this hero's journey, and your part of that hero's journey was you met Darth Vader and you battled him. You came out transformed. How did this change you, turning this business to a sellable business, and then understanding what that looks like for future does? How were you transformed by that?
Oh, it was the biggest professional pivot of my life. I sold the business, took a little time to recover, went to work as a broker for a year, helping others buy and sell. Loved part of that, hated part of that, learned a ton. Went and ran an incubator for 3 years, helping startup companies start up and grow faster. Loved that, caught the bug, went out and bought, turned around and sold 2 other businesses. I think primarily to prove to myself that what I learned the first time through wasn't a fluke.
I love that, because it's the practice of business. If you want to get good and master business, you have to practice doing it. Like, get up to bat and see if you can hit the guy's pitch. Yes or no? Right.
Yes, I agree with you, but I also recognize that that's not how most of us in business do it. And I'm not even sure, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go on, I'm not even sure that's how most people in business should do it. But for me, having gotten out and gone on to that next challenge and started to realize what the mechanics needed to be, dramatically informed my ability to do it a second and a third time, much faster and more successfully than I had done it in that first 15-year journey. So huge learn for me, huge learn.
Yeah. What kind of businesses were they? These second and third ones that you bought and then sold?
I went from a model of heavy client involvement and service to as simple of a model as I could find. So I was buying and selling car washes and laundromats and some of those more traditional vending machine model businesses, and loved the simplicity of the business, and found that what I had developed and learned in that admittedly more sophisticated business gave me great ability to create some good results in those simpler models. So they were much more straightforward.
I have to ask you a question about this because I get a lot of students come to me and with their first choice of business they'd like to purchase is, I'd like to purchase a laundromat, a coin-operated laundromat. What's your opinion on that now that you've owned one?
I liked the business. I enjoyed it. It ultimately turned out to me to be a win because of the function of how I found it and how I bought it. And we could spend an hour talking about that story. But I like the business model. It's an expensive one in many cases because of the value of the equipment. If you find the right one, it can be a good, but finding the right one can be a challenge.
Now, the right one, and I'm going to guess, is one that's just changed out all the machines, or the machines are fairly new and good quality versus a coin-operated laundromat where the machines are 15 years old.
I am unapologetically, I'm a cash flow buyer. To me, a good one is one where the cash flow generated by the business is in some real world relationship with the value and price that they want for the business.
Yeah. And what's your opinion on, this is one of the risk involved with buying a coin-operated, because it's a cash business where somebody may not record all the cash they earn with the IRS. What's the risk there?
Good luck selling it, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, but I mean, I've had that, John. I've had the guy say, okay, now that the broker's left, why don't you come back to the condo with me and I'll show you the second set of books. And
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
The ironic thing about that is he got done showing me the second set of books and then said, and I'm not making this up, not only that, I think the numbers are better than this because I think my brother is stealing from us. So, right? So it's like, hey, I'm lying to the IRS, but you should trust me and write me a big check because I'm an honest guy. I mean, it's such a bizarre scenario to play out. But I've run into that over and over in that space. Run the business the way it's supposed to be run, and you can reasonably expect a smooth path to exit. One of the core questions I ask owners I work with is, can you document your results? If you can't, they didn't happen, period. No cake and eat it too.
So you're saying, in a month's time, all the quarters they take in, can you document that's coming in and that has to match with the IRS?
Yeah. What your tax return says is what I get to bring to the bank, right? So if you can't document it, if you want me to believe, and I've got them, right? I've got the financials where the handwritten notes on the side show me how much more they actually took in. Here's the financials that informed the tax returns, but here's what it really was. What am I supposed to do with that? All I can take from that is you are not an honest owner, and what else that you've told me shouldn't I trust?
Yeah, exactly. You start off with, what is it called? Fruit of the poisonous tree. It's never going to get better, right?
Yep. I'll lie to an agency that can put me in jail, but I won't lie to you, John.
That's right. Okay. All right. So that fourth business, what was that, and what's the story on that?
Same sort of model. A service center. That one had multiple car wash bays and a laundromat. Yeah.
And you really like those? Do you put people in those and just say, hey, here's the first 5 things you should look for before you buy these, or what?
I am not big on the buyer side anymore. I don't do a lot of coaching or engagement on the buyer side. I'm almost exclusively on the seller side. So I work with owners.
All right. So when did you start Exit Oasis?
We've been operating here for 5 or 6 years now. For me, that was after the last sale. I came to realize I loved the space, but I didn't. I carry ownership pretty heavy. I'm the wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, drive to the shop kind of guy, and I didn't feel the compelling need to do that anymore. But I still wanted to be in the space and active. I love the transaction. I love that transition that owners go through. But it's really cool to deal with that stuff and then close my eyes at the end of the day and go to sleep right away. So
right. Yeah. Well, so what's different about Exit Oasis with the type of sellers that come to you? What do you? Is it Mike Finger, or is it some other proprietary program to get the best price at the shortest time?
Yeah, no, I've got a focused curriculum, but it's me. This is I'm not building a huge, coaching empire here. I love the engagement with the small business owners. I enjoy doing what I do. And so this puts me in a place where I get to do it, and results have been great. I'm not a deal guy, John. I'm just going to admit that up front. And what I mean by that is what I do is about helping create the environment that allows a seller to make one of two choices: to keep the business forever or to sell it tomorrow, right? To be in a place where the business is giving me as the owner what I want from it. And it's freaking magical what that creates in terms of the opportunity to sell it. So for me, and when we get there and we're ready and the owner says, I want to sell, then we'll bring a broker on, to walk alongside, or we'll engage the expertise that we need to make the actual transaction happen. But all of that happens as a result of the preparation of the business and the owner for sale.
Yeah. So what do you do for you? If I was a 55-year-old CPA and I came to you and said, I'm ready to go, my last kid's out of college, and I just want to slow down. What does that look like?
Fabulous. It's a function of defining a very simple but complicated to answer question, and that is, what do you want? Right? What's my exit goal? When do I want to exit? What do I want to see in terms of proceeds? We reverse engineer from that and to what the business is today, and the path to get from where we are today to what the business needs to look like to give you the exit you want. That's what we're doing. That's the journey we're walking. And hopefully along the way, we're doing it in a way that the owner can start to enjoy that engagement more. I don't work on commission because I've had the experience too many times, whereas we are prepping for sale, an owner falls back in love with their business and decides they want to keep it. And that is a wonderful outcome, as long as the business is giving you as an owner what it is you want. So it's looking at
leaving you out to dry. Yeah.
Well, if I'm commission based, absolutely, right.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea, is let's build a business that gives its owner what it wants, whether you're the owner or the buyer is the owner, right? Because sellability is ownability. Those two things go hand in hand, even though we sometimes think they don't.
Can you expound upon that? Sellability is ownability. What do you mean?
All right. So when I sit down with an owner, and let's take just a quick step back. One of the things I realized from my own experience, and when I started looking at building a curriculum for Exit Oasis, is the reality that this entire space is defined by complexity, right? If I look at the professionals who earn their living in mergers and acquisitions, what do? They're accountants, they're attorneys, they're brokers. They're the ones that know the technical aspect of page 27 of it's all of this complexity stuff, right? That's the messaging that we get. Hey, you better pay attention to this new SBA program on line 7, all of this complexity. But the truth of the matter is if you look at it, most owners who fail to sell because of something simple. And so I started whittling away and I came up with 3 basic questions. Are your results desirable? Can a buyer duplicate your results, and can you document your results? If you can give me a strong yes to those three questions, we are well on our way towards selling that business. If you're giving me no on any of those questions, we have a huge problem, and that's where we need to focus our time and energy.
Yeah, because the new owner can't duplicate that.
That's right.
If you don't have those in place, if they don't have the favorable answers, he can't duplicate that. And he goes like, oh what am I going to do?
Hey,
right?
You've got great results, but it's all because of who you are and what you do during the day. And you're not replaceable. Who cares how good the results are, right? I mean, these are basic things, but I propose that those three questions kill 99 deals for every one that fails because of some technicality. Those are the folks that don't even get to the broker. They're getting rejected 9 out of 10 by the business brokers because the brokers don't want to waste the time on a business they can't sell, right? So it's those basic, simple, foundational elements that most business owners need to spend their time on. Then when they're ready, let's engage somebody who's got that technicality stuff dialed in, and we're off to the races.
Now, when you ask these and they don't come with the right answer, is that a customer potential, or is that somebody that, where do they come in? What are you looking for? A negative answer or a false positive? Yeah.
Well, it's almost always some combination of both. We've got 2 yeses and a no. We've got a weak no, a strong no, and a strong yes. It all depends. And in most cases, most owners are in a place where the business isn't ready for sale. So we look to make that alignment between the owner's desire for exit and what the market is likely to do. So a simple example, if I want to sell my business for $2 million and I'm kicking 70 grand to seller's discretionary earnings, I've got a gap, right? A fairly substantial one in most cases. So it's okay, how do we change the business? How do we grow the business? How do we increase the profitability? Let's get that dialed in so we can create that exit that you're looking for.
Yeah. I have to touch on this. Is one of the hardest things is getting the managers, the owners, to delegate to somebody else, like giving responsibility and to give it to somebody else. To me, if you said, hey, we got to do these 3 things, bring in more customers, get them to buy more, and get them to buy more frequently, is pretty easily. It's usually the management, like, you need to bring somebody else in to replace you. Like, how do you deal with that? It's a pragmatic
problem that usually has a pragmatic answer. And I'll give you a real simple example. I'm on the phone the other day with the son of the owner. The son works in the shop, runs the shop. The owner does 1,500 things like owners do, and he's telling me the story about dad's on the forklift. Right? Well, guess what? Your new job is every time you see dad on the forklift, you're kicking him off the forklift so that he can do these other things that we've been. It's creating that vacuum that sucks the owner into what they're supposed to be doing, and we do that by filling in from the other way. But that's part of it. And you know, it's funny. I heard a story the other day about a guy who owned a business that did electrical installations on roofs. And what he did for himself is he allowed himself to install on Thursday because he loved to do it. He didn't need to do it. He had guys to do it, but he scheduled some time to do installations on Thursday, and then the rest of the week he ran the business. But it was concrete, it was intentional, and that's what we did instead of him hopping out. Right? So it's that kind of stuff, talking about why we do it and what we need to do.
Yeah, I agree with that because I read, and I don't know if there's comparisons here, but comedians, they'll say, hey, you really want to get good at listening to the feedback of the audience. You got to go back into those small improv centers and do your bit to work on that, to make sure you know how it feels to be the people that are working for you. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, how common is that owner responsive, well, no one works as hard as I do. No one cares as much as I do. And that's a real feeling, but guess how we change that? And part of it is you stepping back and creating the space for them to do more and care more. And it is hard. I've lived it, and I've helped other owners do it. But if we don't make that transition in terms of approach, we don't get to answer yes to that second question. Can can a buyer duplicate my results?
Yeah. So this is where the hero's journey comes in, because it talks about the transformation you went through, the ordeal,
Yep.
Working 18 hours a day and trying to figure out what was going on. And you take this mess, and that's your message to everybody else. Go, look, I get you. How many hours are you working per day? And they say 12. Well,
Yep.
how would you like it? How would it feel? Do you work in one and you have more time with your family?
Yep. How do I get
much better? How do I do it?
Right. And it's again, it wasn't easy for me. It's not easy for others, but it's walking that journey together that where I get the most fulfillment from what I do.
Yeah. And you've been doing this, I think, LinkedIn's like 6-7 years, going on 8.
Yep.
How many clients have you worked on in that?
During that time period, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 clients
40 or
right
50.
now are selling at about a rate of 25% a year, are exiting, which is just about perfect, right? Because if you and I sit down for the first time, there's a good chance we're looking at a 3 to 5 year journey, depending on the position of your business right now. Given the fact
do you
that
work for them for 3 to 5 years, or is it
often,
what does that look like?
Often our relationship lasts that long. Yep.
Yeah. And what do they call you? It's like if somebody says, "Hey, who's this Mike Finger on the books? This payment going to?" And what do they call you? You are a exit.
I'm a coach
Advisor.
I'm a coach.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a business coach. I use that title intentionally. I'm not a consultant. I'm not going to come in and spend, 80 hours this month and charge you a bazillion dollars to do X. I'm a firm believer that it's the owner that changes the business. And so we do that work together. We work on how the owner needs to change their approach to the business so it can change.
Yeah. And how much of the mindset coaching, the kind of Tony Robbins kind of coaching, do you come in and say to be able to see, you found gas in your tank to go another 5 years to exit your 50 employee company. What is the story you tell them? It's like, I want to exit the company now. Well, no, you got about 2 to 3 more years. You got to find some more gas in the tank. What's that message?
The first meeting we do is a deep dive intake where I learn about the business and the owner and their intentions. The second one is where we walk through. It's not a valuation process because I'm not a valuation guy, but it's a process where we figure out what a buyer can pay you for this business. Right. And when we look at that, when we create that reality, when we talk about what the market can do for you, that's usually where that moment happens, right? Where it's like, I want something different than this. How do I get it? And so from a mindset perspective, I want to be very clear. This is not, I don't do a be like me kind of thing. Because I think there's 100 different ways to walk this journey as an owner, but I am convinced it starts with you asking yourself, and I've heard, John, you talk about goal setting before. What do you want? I want to exit in 5 years at this valuation. Okay, fabulous. Now let's work backwards from that to figure out what the business needs to look like to realistically give that to you. Does that mean you have to list the business that? I don't care. List the business for 5 times that amount if you think that there's a guy out there that's going to pay for you. But let's have a business that reasonably produces the outcome that hits our goal. Let's do that. And then let's work from that floor up.
Yeah. Have you had any clients where you just crushed it? You said, hey, they came to you. What do you want? You said, let's work backwards. You designed these, and I'm guessing it's also kind of flexible too, because events change, products, services add, maybe you bought a company to add to it, and it just killed the goals at, 3-5 years. You exit it much bigger than they wanted to.
I've got clients where where we start at an $800,000 revenue level, and they really aspire to get to 2 million. And 18 months later, the goal is now 5 to 7 million because we're already at 4. That's a lot of fun because, again, part of that is that perspective change. And like I alluded to before, part of that's hope, intention, and part of that's fear, because it's like this outcome, this path you're telling me I'm currently on is not the path I want to be on. How do we get there? John, I do 3% of it, right? The client, the owner is the one who changes the business. So I've worked with some owners who have created remarkable results. And so that's been a lot of fun to ride alongside with them.
Yeah. But it's great to have, if you're in a dark forest in Minneapolis or Minnesota and your goal is to get to the other side, it's great to have somebody with a flashlight that knows where the path is.
That's right. Hey, I've walked this before. And yeah, especially when we start to get closer to the deal where we can talk about some of the realities that they should expect from that process. And I start planting those seeds as much as a year in advance. Well, keep in mind that when this happens, it's going to blah, blah, blah. And that negates the shock and pain that can happen when a deal falls through, or why is this taking so long, or some of those sorts of things. Realism in this space is, in my experience, in short supply. And so I don't try to be a deal guy. I try to be a real guy when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah. Like, hey man, it is what it is. If you've got 100 buyers, possibly it's probably going to happen fast and a lot more cash. But if you've only got 2 or 3 buyers, it could take longer. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Building a business is a massive accomplishment, and selling it is one of your biggest decisions of your life. When the time comes to get acquired, you deserve the highest possible value and the best fit buyer. Unfortunately, most brokers and intermediaries out there have zero technical knowledge or experience owning companies of their own, let alone digital businesses. That's where the Magnolia Firm comes in. They're a specialty M&A firm specializing in helping digital businesses get acquired. Their team is made up of entrepreneurs, so they know what it's like to be in your shoes and how to get you to the finish line. If you want to sell your business, get in touch with the folks at themagnoliafirm.co.
Mike, you and I talked a little bit before on this email about you had a topic you wanted to talk about. One, it was the problem with acquisition entrepreneurs, and you have 3 problems there.
Let's talk about that. I have 4 problems.
4 problems.
I've got 4 problems, John. Let's do it. Problem number. Well, let me start with a little framing first. And I am primarily on the seller's side in this. I coach small business owners who are interested in preparing for sales. So I know that a number of your listeners are on the buy side, so some of this is going to run counter to that, but I'm comfortable with that. I'm unapologetically small business. What I mean by that is, if you look at the numbers, 95% of small business owners that exist will never see more than $5 million a year in revenue. Most substantially less than that. And so that is I
think the number is like only 7% get to $1 million.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, when you look at how it climbs up from there. So that is the marketplace. It's defined by that. And so I like to keep that in mind when we talk about mergers and acquisition, but yet you and I both know that most mergers and acquisitions content is what I call M&A porn. It is it's the, I sold my business for $100 million on Tuesday and you can do it too. I bought 57 businesses last month. Let me tell you how. And I get the clickbait stuff of that, and I don't have a problem with that. But that is the majority of the content. We're going to hear exponentially more about Google's acquisition than we are about the average sale that might impact a small business owner. And it skews how we think.
I had one of those individuals in my sphere network that said I did 105 acquisitions. And for crying out loud, I just couldn't find any company that wrote like a tombstone or a press release or anything about this. Like, wow, how are you doing this? What kind of companies are these? What is it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah. No, don't get me started. So again, there's the basic framing. And so when we talk about, my problems with acquisition entrepreneurs, let's start here. And it's about the messaging and it's about the content. And it's around the fact that too many speak like this is how a lot of deals get done. I think a false buyer narrative gets created. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
And we don't have to pick on acquisition entrepreneurs. Let's talk about private equity for a second. I can show you article after article about how private equity is up 17% this year. And that's really exciting, right? But then we look at the deal count and we realize that accounts for 8,000 purchases over the entire country.
Quadrillions of equity.
Yeah, exactly.
Black powder ready to
Yeah, that's just it, John. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. And nobody should care about it because the majority of small business owners are never going to pass even the initial sniff test of private equity. A small deal for private equity is larger than most small business owners will ever get to. So it's like, why do we care? Why are we told we're supposed to care? But that is the majority of the content. We can talk about family offices or venture capital or any of these other things, and they're just minuscule portions. What does get a deal done? Who is the buyer? Most small businesses that sell successfully are going to sell to another individual who is going to come and work full-time in the business that they purchase. Now, that might not be as sexy as private equity, but that's how deals get done. And so you'd better be building a business that's going to be attractive to your most likely buyer if you actually want to exit, which means you'd better go ahead.
Well, but that looks exactly like you.
Yeah,
somewhat
right.
like you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you go, well, why is that important? Well, what would I need if I was going to buy a business? Well, I'd need to earn an income and I'd need to service the debt I incurred to buy the business, right? I'd have to do at least those two things. Well, if I can't do those two things when I buy a business, I can't buy the business. But yet we're talking about private equity. We're talking about these other issues. So my concern number one, problem number one is that the content that's out there around this space speaks too loudly to how important this this acquisition entrepreneurialism.
Makes it seem like the noise makes it seem like there's more happening than actually is. And I got to tell you, I spent time in the VC world. I've raised money for VC companies. It does not happen as frequently as you think. Less than like 1% of the businesses get funded by a venture capital firm. It is so rare.
It is extremely rare, but the noise is so loud, and the people in that space want it to be loud, right? Because private equity wants people chasing their money. They want deal flow. They want to see opportunities. They don't talk about the fact that I have a conversation with a private equity guy who tells me my role is to look at 3 to 5 deals a week, and I'll be lucky if we'll do one of those deals a year. And you think, how do that number might work for them and help them meet their goals, but it doesn't inform, educate, or help the average small business owner. So that's problem number one.
Let me
hit me.
Let me bring up another a point here. Anecdotal point was that I came across this also when I had a student looking at a veterinarian business in Texas, and we talked to the broker, and we asked him, can we have the balance sheet? And he goes, well, I've done over 300 deals and, I've never had anybody ask for a balance sheet. And it's like, well, who's buying these businesses then? And he goes, other veterinarian. Sure. I go, okay, all right. It's not a financial buyer. It's another veterinarian that's going to come in, graduate from veterinarian school, buy it, work 10 years, 15 hours a day, and then sell it to the next veterinarian.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's like, if I'm a buyer and I look, it's a great example. If I look at that, I'm like, oh, well, normal is this, but that's not the story they tell, right? The messaging, the content, I think it misinforms the majority of the audience, and I have a problem with that. So,
Yeah.
problem.
All right. So number two.
Problem number two: far too many acquisition entrepreneurs are regurgitating guru junk. That is what the presentation about entrepreneur or acquisition entrepreneurials turns into too many times. And I've heard you speak about this before. I think the biggest culprit there is the buy a business with no money down, right? That dream, that shortcut, that sell. Boy, it's really sexy and attractive. If I'm an aspiring business owner that doesn't have any money, I can scrape together 10 grand for the program and learn some secret. And John, how often does that type of deal get done?
I would say very, very rarely. And I'll give you a story. When you do a lot of podcasts, a lot of people are attracted to you and they reach out to you and they ask you questions. And I had somebody from Belgium reach out to me and say, can you help me buy a business? And I said, well, what kind of money do you have? Like, well, I don't have any money. And I go, well, how did you think you were going to buy a business in the United States? And he goes, well, I heard about this no money down. Everybody's buying no money down in the United States. Like, well, that's not true. It doesn't happen. And if it does happen, it's extremely rare that somebody as a profitable business is going to give it to you and then they're going to finance 100% of it.
Right. It doesn't.
To you, right?
Is it hypothetically possible? Of course it is. Has it probably happened? Yes. But it is such a rare bird that the idea that has the prominence that it does. And I've seen it. I've had aspiring buyers tell me that they have spent X portion of their down payment savings on these kinds of programs where they're learning this stuff, hoping for a shortcut, when in fact what it does is it kills their opportunity. The best response I ever had from someone when they talked about this was, if you're so bad at managing your personal finances that you can't save a little money for a down payment, why would I ever trust you with my main asset? Why would I ever trust you that you have the financial management skills to run my business at a profit that will allow you to actually pay me as we go? There's such a disconnect there, but that is messaging, and that's some of that guru gunk, and that's not the only one, right? That no money down. One of them that's a pet peeve for me is the messaging that, hey, you should try and buy a business in a completely different industry because then you'll be able to bring a new approach and be more creative than that industry than the people who have been doing it forever. And again, hypothetically possible, sure. But I have experienced myself and I have seen others experience what happens when you get crushed by a lack of knowledge with a new business. What do you mean I had to do that certification? Exactly. Yeah. What do you mean I can't do this way? Yeah. Exactly. It's brutal.
Yeah, so. I had another story about this. I did have a student that was younger and he had a little bit of money down and he tried to buy this business where it takes the old computers, separates them and sells the chips or the boards on eBay. But I said, like, this is probably going to be a deal that won't happen because you're too young. The guy that's selling it is like 72 and he's looking for his peer to turn it over to.
Right.
You're just an unknown peer. Seller's going to sell to peers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if there's any component of seller financing in there, right? The message that I have to trust you to do it. I'm reminded of a business that I looked at in an industry I didn't know. And as I dug deeper, I started talking to people with knowledge in that industry. And they said, well, did you check out X filing? Right. And so I go and I look at this filing and it doesn't make much sense to me, but I show non-compliance. And so I show this to somebody who knows this industry, and I say, what does this mean? And they say, it means you're going to spend $150,000 replacing that thing sometime in the next year or two. And it's like, boom, the deal just blew up because I didn't know something. I didn't know to check that thing. And how close did I get to signing a piece of paper because of the lack, that would have created a real problem for me because I didn't know. So
yeah, you're going to pay now or pay later, and
that's
usually
right.
Paying later is going to destroy the company. Yeah.
All right. Problem number 3. I think too many in this space ignore or undersell the difficult reality of running a profitable business. And let me say something that might be a little controversial. No one has ever made money simply buying a business. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. People have made money buying a business and then running it and showing a profit. People have made money buying a business and then selling it for more and showing a profit. But the simple act of buying a business is almost always a function of spending money, creating debt, putting out. And the fact that we hear so much in this space about the acquisition and the buy and how to do that, I want to know what happens next, because the acquisition is simply an open door to actually play the game. It is not the game in and of itself. And I think too often the messaging in this space forgets about the other shoe that has to drop, which is I show up on day one and I start running that business.
Yeah. If you look at the numbers, what I just said, only 7% make it to $1 million. So all 93% of companies are going to be run by the owner.
Yep.
And if you don't have that experience to run that business, it's probably not going to be around in a year, because I can tell you the numbers. If you don't, over 50% are gone within 5 years.
Yep. Yep. But John, can't I just hire a manager to run it for me?
Yeah, and this is another thing. A lot of the gurus will tell you, buy a business, work above the business, put somebody in that role.
That's
really?
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you've never done that before, is that difficult? And I'm being sarcastically.
Yeah, it is difficult. It's possible. I've done it. But I've also done it, and then 9 months later got notice that the person's husband got transferred to Kansas City and they're going with them. And I've done it, and I've found out that the person fell in love and is moving to Alaska. You are only ever an email away from being sucked back into that business you own for 3 months or 6 months or whatever it takes you to find a replacement. Now, if your life is set up to deal with that reality, fabulous. Buy the business, hire a manager. That can be a great model. But I've seen people who are working a full-time job buy a business on the side with that concept and suddenly find that on day one, 2 people quit. Well, now what do? I got a job and I've got this business, and it's like, how did you not know that was likely to happen? And so that's
what the broker told me.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the guru told me.
That's right. I was supposed to. And again, if you've got a team of 12 people surrounding you and they're your management group, and fabulous, that's a great model. And you've got flexibility and you can plug people in and do that stuff. But the messaging when it comes to actually running a profitable business is lacking from my perspective.
Yeah. I agree with you there. And it's rare to find a business that, you're only putting in an hour in it. I mean, those are out there, but it's rare. Very rare.
Here's my last one. And for me, it's probably the biggest one, but it's also the squishiest one. Ultimately, I worry that too many who are in the acquisition entrepreneurial space aspire to be business gigolos, not small business owners. What do I mean by that? I mean, you know what? There was a time when I aspired to be M&A cool, right? I was never able to pull it off. I've owned 8 businesses. I've sold 4 successfully, but all I ever did was sell my small business. I never got into deals. Our communities are built on small business owners. They're the contributors, they're the builders, they're the employers. They're the ones that do the things that allow us to grow and develop. And too often when I see this space, I see somebody who wants to do the wham bam thank you ma'am. And you know what? It's legal. I don't have a problem with that. But don't ask me to look up to it, right? Because I'm afraid that if we spend too much time glorifying that in terms of business ownership, that we lose the owners who are in the community donating to the local high school band every year, who are the sponsors for such and such, who are investing in employees for the next 10 years because they plan to be there owning the place in 10 years, not somebody who's going to buy and sell the thing over an 18-month period. Again, I've done those deals. I liked it. It was fun. There was money to be made. It was a good thing. I don't have a problem with someone who does that. But collectively, if we all do business that way, we've got a serious problem. That 93% of small business owners who do small businesses, the 95% who are slightly, or, the additional 2% that are slightly bigger, that's what our communities are built around. And I'm afraid that the acquisition entrepreneur messaging can get twisted to create aspirations that take us away from those kinds of small business owners.
Yeah. Maybe it's the online type of generation where you think you just could put time into online and it's going to all do it for you.
It's the mini Gordon Gecko, right? We've been seeing this stuff for forever, but now we're to a place where it's trickled down. And again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with buying a business and fixing it and selling it. I've done that. But what I discovered after looking at that business and how I ran it is I ran it differently than the business that I was building and planned to own forever. And the investments I made in my people and the investments I made in the community and the things that I did were different when it was a quick in and out. And that is, I think that's something that's worth considering, worth talking about in this acquisition entrepreneur community.
Relationships,
foundation, contribution, community. How do those things live? How do I support them as an owner if I don't plan to be here for more than 18 months?
Yeah. Well, I think that works better at a smaller level. Let's say if you buy a content site and it's just a domain name and a potential service, it's $5,000 and you fix up the content, you affiliate it, and then you move it. That's fine. But if you're thinking about doing that where the people are you're actually working with people,
right,
and then flipping it, that's kind of hard. You don't want to be a chainsaw owl, let's say, right?
That's right. That's a great reference and example. I see some of these clusters out there supporting, encouraging, and incubating that type of approach, and I think that's troubling.
Yeah.
So those are my four problems with acquisition entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and I really greatly appreciate your time on this, and I want to wish you the best success with Exit Oasis. And
Very
it's
good.
Mike Finger, not Fingers, so don't add that S on that.
Check me out on LinkedIn. I love connecting with folks in the space there, and I'm pretty active there. So thank you again for the opportunity, John.
A lot of realism here in this splash of cold water. I'll tell you, I have people coming to me that buy my course on how to buy a business who have had it up to here with trying to chase a business with no money down. I said, it's really rare. It's not going to happen. You should really work on your personal balance sheet.
Yep.
Or raising capital with investors and bringing partners on.
Yep.
I was told myself that when I tried to buy a really profitable business, even though I had a high net worth, like I was an accredited investor, that I needed to bring somebody else in to strengthen the balance sheet to purchase the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
John, that is such an important point. And just very quickly, the biggest cost of this stuff that we've talked about is that it destroys real world exits and real world acquisitions. People who are chasing this mythical stuff kill their ability to actually get it done.
Yeah. Are there unicorns out there?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on Top M&A Entrepreneurs. I really appreciate it.
Been my pleasure.
I hope this video has inspired you. If you need help buying your first $1 million business, make sure to visit me at dealflowsystem.net. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe down below. Comment on it, share it, tell everyone about it. And thanks for watching.